And as you know, Kelly, in Chicago, there were Polish neighborhoods, there were Irish neighborhoods, there were Jewish neighborhoods, there were black neighborhoods.
Yes.
And the men of that community didn't allow crime to run rampant in the streets because the men would step out and say, no, if you were in an all-Polish neighborhood in Chicago and young Polish guys were running around bullying people or snatching purses, the Polish men of that community went out and took care of business on the street and didn't allow that to happen. Same way in the African-American community when I grew up, the black men of that community wouldn't allow that to happen. Or the Italian men or the Irishmen. So today, because 4 out of 10 children being born in Illinois are being born fatherless.
You're absolutely right, Tom. I mean, I grew up, I had a father, but my father and mother couldn't get along at the time, so I grew up with my mother and my grandmother in that Chicago Heights ghetto, and I got bullied a whole lot because I really didn't have anybody, watching my back. All the guys in the neighborhood were pretty much either selling drugs or in jail. So there was really nobody to let the kids know that what was going on wasn't right. Nobody let the bullies know what was going on wasn't right. So you're absolutely right about that, and this needs to change. But the question...
77% of all teenage crimes in America, 77% of all teenage crimes are created by fatherless teenagers. Today, in Detroit, 75% of the children being born are being born fatherless, or back where I grew up at. If that sociologists are accurate with that, with those statistics, then we're creating a nation full of criminals. Because of and again, I go back to having men in the community step up, because the police and the laws cannot solve all the problems. The community has to solve its own problems in so many respects,
And if the community has no leaders, it can't solve its own problems. The problems are allowed to run rampant, and the problems just gets worse.
Well, yeah, I agree. Let me tell you, Farrakhan, who many disagree with, and for good reason, but he did one thing I thought was right. He got 1 million black men to march on Washington, which I thought was the wrong place to march. Why should they march on Washington? You're just saying that the government is at fault. What he should have done was march in Compton, in Harvey, in Watts, in Detroit, and showed the young black men in that community, the pimps and the dope pushers and the drug dealers, no, you're not a man. This is what a man is. A man is a person who, goes to work, takes care of their family. We're men, and see, when I grew up in Harvey, let me digress. Both my parents are alcoholic. I dreamed that one day I would become a tavern owner. I thought that was the epitome of success. I couldn't think outside of my environment. I went to caddy at a country club where there were doctors and lawyers and everything, and I had never been in that environment, and they treated me like a man. After 2 or 3 years, I started thinking maybe I could be more than just a tavern owner. So I understand that young boy in the community who sees a drug pusher or a pimp and thinks, wow, they're successful. They got a new car and new clothes and money. And so that's the most successful person they see in their environment. So all that makes sense to me. I think I went all the way around the mulberry bush. Forgive me, but...
Hey, you go around the mulberry bush. You open for Frank Sinatra. You get to do what you want in this country. Yeah. We're listening to Tom Dreesen on AM News Talk 750 KFQD. I have a caller, Tom. Would you like to take a call?
Of course.
All right, I'm going to do that right now. We have Nathan on the line. Nathan, what's happening?
Hi, this is Nathan calling from Palmer.
Hey, Nathan, what's up, brother? You're on the line with Tom Dreesen on KFQD.
Hey, I was just curious about what Tom's thoughts were, if maybe bullying was also just inevitable, like a part of life or something, and is something that you have to sort of control rather than there's like some sort of solution for. Specifically, like there was a video game that came out a couple of years ago, Bully, and it was like really controversial, but also I thought maybe that was just sort of a way of containing something that already was there, and you're just sort of like maybe you're finding a healthy outlet for that sort of thing. Just an idea.
Well, I think that a lot of this. I remember having there was a bully in our schoolyard. He was a big Irish kid, tough kid too, and he later became a vice cop in Chicago, which I thought was perfect, But I remember no one would stand up to him, and one day a guy stood up to him, and the word was out that if you stand up to him, they would. Even though you get whipped, even though you get beat up, you stood up to him, and he didn't push you around anymore. That was a sort of theme in those days. But the other thing, too, was, Nathan, we had a lot more activities as a kid. There were all sorts of games, and by the way, there weren't all these technical things. That we didn't have computers and all these other things, so you interacted more with and there were more things to do. I think sometimes what's happening in our schools, they don't have enough to do. You know, there's not enough social activity and certainly not enough parental interaction in the community. You know.
That's also another good point. Parental interaction. When I was growing up with my mother and my grandmother, the parental interaction was short. And thank you for the call, Nathan. I appreciate you calling. And the parent interaction was pretty much sitting me in front of a television and then going to work. And that's how it was. And that's how I learned. That's how I grew up. But that is not the case. I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that with your kids, especially these days. There was just too many things, too many silly and time-wasting outlets and frivolous things that kids can get involved with, and to just make their lives worse. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't think I made sense there.
Well, you did, but again, I came from another era, and my era was you stood up to the bully. You know, you rarely ever took it home. You never ever took it home and said to your mom or dad, you know, that somebody pushed me around. You pretty much had to handle it yourself. And if you did, you were told if they, you know, that you have, you know. And again, I read a book years ago by a man named James Cavanaugh, and the title was amazing. It said, "There are some men too gentle to live among the wolves, and there are just some kids who are too gentle to live among the wolves, you know. And there are other kids like myself. If you push me, I'd push you back, you know." And I was a little guy, but I was just that kind of kid that I didn't take that, you know, I couldn't handle somebody pushing me around without me pushing back, you know. But there were other kids that, again, couldn't handle that. So you need teachers and counselors and obviously more classes on what bullying really is, you know.
Absolutely. His name is Tom Dreesen. His website is tomdreesen.com. What are you doing these days? I mean, these days, what are you doing in a couple upcoming? What do you got coming?
I'm touring. You know, I still do a lot of, you know, as you point, I do a lot of corporate events, AT&T, IBM, American Airlines. People hire me sometimes to do their awards banquets as a master of ceremonies. But I do stand-up comedy always. That's my love, my passion. I'm doing a show now called An Evening of Laughter and Memories of Sinatra in theaters, you know, around the country, where I do a film. The theater goes dark and a film comes on. Dennis Farina narrates a film of my life, and about a 4-minute film, and it introduces me. I come out and do about 45 minutes of stand-up comedy, and then I head for a bar on stage, and I toast Frank, Sammy, and Dean, and I start telling stories of what it was like traveling with those guys. As I do, slides come on the screens, and then I eventually have the audience laughing, and then I turn them into tears. I talk about Frank's funeral, the end of his life, what it was like, and I have the audience actually in tears of the lessons I learned from these guys, and then I get them laughing again. And then they leave the theater with Frank singing The Best Is Yet to Come, because that's the last song Frank ever sang on stage. And that's on his tombstone, Francis Albert Sinatra, The Best Is Yet to Come.
And the best has already been in Alaska this morning. Tom Dreesen, I thank you so much for your time. You are a generous man and an awesome role model. I hope to be opening for you someday soon in L.A. doing some Frank Sinatra for you. I do a little blue eyes. I got Frank's in my blood. So if you ever need me, just let me know. I'll come down there. I'll sing it up for you. We'll have a great time.
My criticism of you is you don't dream big enough. You should say, one day I hope that you'll be opening for me, Tom Dreesen.
Well, you know what? My narcissism kept me. I was going to do that, but you know what? Not you, sir. Not you. Tom, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I hope to talk to you soon, and you have a great day.
Call me anytime, Kelly.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye. Tom Dreesen, you just heard. He was so gracious. I appreciate him so much. I am loving Frank in life right now. We're going to be coming back after the break with Teapot Party Administrator Frank Rayburn. You're listening to Kelly Lee Williams on KFQD AM 750.